Hold the presses. Eddie Radosevich here. George Stoya from the Soonerscoop.com studios on Campus Corner. A instant reaction of sorts with some news that comes out today from Barry Tramel. It seems like the Big 12 is about to rewrite the rules. And I think that's obviously where we're going to start today. What the hell? What the hell has happened? Make it easy, simple for a big, dumb brain like myself, George.
I don't know if I can, but I will give it my best shot. Let's start here. The Big 12 standings as they stand right now with 2 games left. Texas is atop of the league.
That's right.
With only 1 loss. And then you have 4 teams all tied with 2 losses. Oklahoma State, Kansas State, and Iowa State. Lots of football still left to be played. Everyone's been trying to figure out the tiebreakers.
Sure.
And that's been a big do because no one really understands the tiebreakers. There is a website out there that people have been playing with. It's been very accurate in terms of reading the tiebreaker rules and lining up. And the scenario that a lot of people have been playing with is the one that Texas wins out, which seems like it could happen. We'll see what happens in Ames this weekend. And then you have a 3-way tie between Oklahoma State, and Kansas State.
Okay.
The issue there is that the tiebreaker rules, according to the Big 12, if all 3 teams have not played head-to-head, then head-to-head goes out the window. The head-to-head tiebreaker goes out the window. So, for example, Oklahoma and Kansas State have not played each other. Meanwhile, Oklahoma State has beaten both OU and Kansas State. So people would just assume Oklahoma State would get in.
That's the logical thinking.
It would be very logical. The reason the Big 12 did not put that in the tiebreaker rule in the first place is head-scratching. But according to the current rules as they stand on Tuesday, that is not the case. It would go to common opponents play between each other, which would be UCF, Kansas, and Iowa State. Kansas State would have beaten all 3 of those teams. Oklahoma would have beaten 2 of them. They'd be 2-1, and OSU would be 1-2 against those 3 teams, putting Kansas State in the Big 12 championship game. According to Barry Tramel of selloutcrowd.com, he has talked to a Big 12 source that says they are going to meet on Wednesday with the Big 12 athletic directors and clarify that rule, which would put Oklahoma State now into the Big 12 championship game. I've talked to a few people. Oklahoma is unaware of this happening. They were not told. They met on Tuesday with all the Big 12 athletic directors. This clarification was not brought up. They meet every Wednesday to talk about the college football playoff rankings and bowl scenarios and situations. This is apparently going to be talked about in that meeting tomorrow on Wednesday.
That
over
Oklahoma
Zoom.
Was unaware of was even happening, right?
They knew there was going to be a meeting on Wednesday because they meet every Wednesday.
But didn't know that this was going to be brought up.
They did not know this was going to be brought up.
Interesting.
And it's interesting because in this exact scenario, it doesn't really affect Oklahoma. They weren't going to get in anyways with a 3-way tie with Oklahoma State and Kansas State. Like I said, Kansas State would have gotten in, and now OSU would get in if they do change the rule. But what it does do is bring up talking points about, okay, well, does that change the other tiebreaker rules and other 3-way scenarios? I'm not sure there's another scenario in which you have a team that's beaten both teams head-to-head and not all 3 teams have played each other. But it causes a lot of controversy because Texas didn't play OSU. That's been a big argument point. Well, if OSU had to play Texas and Austin like Kansas State did, then they would probably have 3 losses and they wouldn't even be in this conversation. So,
or Oklahoma State could have gone down and beat Texas, and
correct.
Texas is now in this situation, right?
Exactly. And so again, and Texas could lose on Saturday, and all of a sudden there's a 4-way tie, among first place.
Sure.
What do you do there? So there's all these different tiebreaker scenarios, and I wish I could sit here and tell you, well, this is OU's path. That's no longer the case. I still think if Texas loses to Iowa State, OU's got a really good shot of getting in because I think they would still hold a lot of the tiebreaker stuff pending the changes that they make. But it's really hard to sit here and say this is exactly what has to happen for OU to get in. And that's what's so messy about this, Eddie, is the Big 12 failed to make the tiebreaker rules clear before the season. And, talking to people, they had to change before the season. When they added BYU, Cincinnati, UCF, and who am I blanking on? Houston.
They're a very forgettable program, but Oklahoma fans need them to win this weekend, right?
Exactly. So, but when they added those 4, they had to change the previous tiebreaker rules, and it sounds like clearly they didn't make those very clear.
Sure.
And so now we're sitting in this situation where they're having an unannounced meeting on Wednesday with 2 games left to potentially change the rules. And look, we're going to get into it in a second. Fans believe in the conspiracy theory that they're trying to keep OU out of the Big 12 championship game and the Big 12's trying to screw OU. That's fine and all. I don't buy the conspiracy theory, Eddie, in this situation. I just think the conference is really stupid. That is my takeaway from the people I've talked to,
Sure.
from everything I've read. I think it is a bunch of clueless people running the conference right now that made a massive error, and now they're going to look like bad guys because they're stupid, and they have to change the rule with 2 games left. And again, fans are going to be fans. People on Facebook are going to, call for people's heads and all that stuff.
Well,
I don't think OU's getting screwed necessarily. They are just in a conference full of morons.
First things first, you could have really truly avoided all of this by just winning in
Just
Lawrence,
winning, yes,
or
correct.
winning in Stillwater, or winning in Lawrence and Stillwater. Like that could have been alleviated right there.
Yeah.
But this just adds to what has already been a tumultuous, somewhat of a year. Or 2 years for Oklahoma fans inside of the Big 12 Conference. There is a belief that, the officiating that hasn't gone Oklahoma's way, the questionable flags or no calls that they got in Stillwater, or, throughout really, truly the entire, exit experience has been unenjoyable. And I think that in a way, it does make you feel better if you just say, they're out to get us.
Right.
If you're an Oklahoma fan. The other side of it, though, is there has been some missed calls. And there are going to be missed calls in a football game, on a baseball field, on a basketball court, wherever, whatever sport you play in. But, that was something that was brought up with Brent Venables today. I think a lot of people that were inside the stadium on Saturday in the West Virginia game saw kind of the ugliness, nastiness that came with some of the questionable flags or no calls, particularly on the Drake Stoops thing. I mean, I had a little bit of Michelob Ultra on my back as people threw beer cans down onto the field, but it has been a talking point, correct?
Yeah, no, I mean, among fans, certainly. And, you look at the Oklahoma State game and the no call against Drake Stoops in the end zone, the call on Brent Venables on the sideline. There's a list of penalties out there that I'm sure that fans are upset by, or, review calls, whatever you have it. Again, I don't buy into the conspiracy, and people are probably going to come at me for not buying into it.
Not the YouTube comment crowd.
My dad believes in the conspiracy, so there you go.
I think I probably have some family members that do as well.
But I do think that there is something to be said about just, the way it's all gone down this year.
It's been sloppy.
It's been very sloppy. And I think officiating, honestly, at every level in football right now has been not great. It's a tough job, and I don't know if they have the right people doing it right now, and it's tough. But it's definitely been a talking point. Brent Venables does not buy into it, which he probably shouldn't. If you buy into that, then it all of a sudden becomes an excuse. So
our own Kerry Murdoch asked Brent Venables today about the missed calls, the conspiracy that possibly is out there, and if it is seeping into the locker room.
There's kind of a growing unrest in the fan base that maybe you guys aren't getting any calls, or they're not calling games correctly because you guys are leaving the conference. I'm curious, you worry about that filtering into your players at all? Do you address that with them about you got to expect maybe the calls aren't going to be made against you?
No, I do, I say I don't believe in conspiracies. That's what I tell them. I'm not going to give them an excuse. I'm not going to let anybody else give them excuses either. So the opportunity that I have around them, my challenge is to not put it in anybody else's hands. Play clean, do the little things right. Sometimes it's going to go for you. Sometimes it's not. Keep playing, keep fighting, keep working, keep believing. Don't get distracted. So we can't live in that world and be our best.
The other night you had the crowd chanting SEC. You have the skirmish in the end zone. Did you feel like any of that led to it?
I don't know. I mean, I think the game the other night was a very intense and passionate, physical football game, and I think that's, the play on the field got everybody fired up, and but the players were just going at it, just competing.
How about Kerry Murdoch asking that question the same day the Big 12 comes out with this tiebreaker thing? Who's
Kerry Murdoch a plant?
Yeah, he could be. That's my theory.
That's interesting. We'll talk to him on the Unofficial 40 about that. It is, coincidence, or the timing of it is somewhat ironic that it comes out today after Brent Venables says that on Tuesday morning. But it is, it's not going to be something that goes away. It's going to be something that's out there over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
God forbid that there is a, some type of questionable call over the next two games, and especially back here on Black Friday against TCU, because I think that place might melt down. There might actually be insurrections at the Big 12 offices. We're not calling for violence in Arlington, but,
I think we should show up. OU's in the title game or not, we should show up to the Big 12 offices.
Well,
Little TMZ style.
This might end up getting us banned by the Big 12, and that's okay because, if we have to miss the Nelly concert, we have to miss the Nelly concert. It is what it is. But Oklahoma does still have somewhat of a path, and I think that, you look at the schedules that are coming out, or not coming out, but we know that is already out there, right? OU with BYU, TCU, OSU with at Houston, and then BYU to close the season. Kansas State plays Kansas, and Kansas State plays Kansas and Iowa State. Iowa State plays Texas, which is a big game.
Big game.
For Oklahoma fans come Saturday night, and then they close out against Kansas State. Iowa State does. Texas has at Iowa State, as we said, and then Texas Tech on Black Friday evening, and then Kansas plays Kansas State, and then at Cincinnati. We'll see if that program's still breathing under Scott Satterfield in 2 weeks. But it is all still out there, correct? And that's something that we've talked about with Brent Venables as well as players. Go ahead.
I think it's still out there. I wish I could
Sure.
say I don't know the exact tiebreakers, but at the end of the day,
If everything was perfect for OU, right, you would prefer that Texas just loses on Saturday in Ames, Oklahoma wins out, and it's pretty cut and dry, I think.
I think so too. Again,
Unless they go back and change all the other tiebreaker rules, which you were George was trying to explain this to me before we began. I still don't understand like the ins and outs of everything that they would have to go back and do, because in my mind, with the clarification or whatever they're saying today, it does make sense. Oklahoma State beat Kansas State. Oklahoma State beat Oklahoma. They should get the tiebreaker
and
advantage.
I would add to that, talking to people at OU, they agree. Like
Sure.
they agree that and some of them even thought that was already the case, that Oklahoma State would get in.
But they did such a poorly job in wording
correct.
the tiebreaker. That's how we've arrived to today.
I mean,
correct?
everybody assumed Kansas State was getting in. And what's really interesting, Scott Wright of the Oklahoman had that clarified on Saturday in Orlando with a Big 12 official, had told him that was the case, that Kansas State would get in. And so for now, the Big 12 a few days later to unclarify that and to clarify it in a different way makes it just really confusing. Again, at the end of the day, though, Eddie, OU needs to just go take care of business these last 2 weeks. Go win these two games. They're very winnable games that they should win and probably should win somewhat soundly in these two games. And then see what happens, right? See what happens. Maybe you get in, maybe you don't. Then you can complain about it. But go win these next 2 weeks. Put yourself in a position to at least be in the conversation to go to Arlington. And if not Arlington, maybe you get to go to a New Year's Six Bowl, whatever you have. Whatever it happens there.
Which you talked about on the Eskridge Lexus postgame show on Saturday night after the West Virginia game, that you feel pretty confident if Oklahoma wins its final two games that they would get a New Year's Six Bowl invite.
I think so. It's somewhat,
unless the Big 12 takes it away, which, based on track record, I don't know. Maybe not.
And some of it has to do with, where they end up in the college football playoff rankings is part of it. It also has to do with, look, if they don't make the Big 12 championship game and say, a 9-3, OSU team does, and they lose to Texas. Texas makes the playoff. That opens up a spot in a New Year's Six Bowl, and I would assume they'll take a 10-2 Oklahoma over a 9-4 Oklahoma State.
Which makes sense.
Those sort of things could happen. But if you win both your last two games, you're putting yourself in a really good spot for either the Cotton Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, or even the Peach Bowl to say we want Oklahoma to come play in our bowl game. Again, a lot could play out, but win the last two games and you're in a good spot.
Oklahoma doesn't control its destiny, though, and I think
Correct.
Oklahoma players knew that on Monday night when we talked to him. Brent Venables obviously knew that on Tuesday when we talked to him, and they're not paying attention to any of the tiebreakers.
Just know I'm trying to go win this week. That's it, and that's not literally. That's where I can utilize the time that I have the best way to be, obviously everything starts and goes through me, but as the head coach, but what do we got to do to win this week? And then what is the turnaround, on a short week look by next week to get these guys ready to play against TCU, on that following Friday. Everything else takes care of itself. We put ourselves in a tough position. That's what I know. We don't control our own destiny. And but let's focus on the finish. Let's focus on this week. Let's focus on, the details and the DNA of this opponent. And because you don't have unlimited time, and you got limited resources, limited time, and so that's where I've not even asked Mike, hey, what does it look like, and have him figure it out. I don't. To me, I don't care right now. I'm really not.
Yeah, obviously there is the thought or the possibility, after last weekend that we still have a shot at the championship, but that's not going to happen if we don't take care of the next 2 games, But if we do, we'll have a really good shot, especially with what's going on around the conference. So,
me personally, I haven't. They mentioned it to us and stuff like that, but I mean, we're really not focused on it. We're just, like I said, just trying to focus on the next game and control what we can control.
Yeah, I think people talk, and I'm not oblivious to it. I obviously know what's going down, but I feel like I sound like a broken record, but you have to take care of your own business and control what you can, because at the end of the day, the rest will take care of itself. And if you don't handle your own business, then it won't even.
Does it help at all that the tiebreakers are kind of convoluted, so you guys don't even have to really worry about going through that in your head and just focus on what's in hand?
Yeah, I don't know the specifics. If I know anything about college football, every week, something different's new, and it's just a bunch of things can happen. So, whatever will happen, and we just, got to focus on this week and getting the dub.
I don't know. They said something like there's 10,000 possibilities or something. I'm
feels
like,
that way. If it is
that's rumor on the street from the Big 12. There's like 10,000 because there's like 5 2-loss teams.
Yeah.
So I don't really know. I'm not gonna do that math. Yeah, I went to Cal, but
Yeah, you went to Cal.
yeah, math is pretty tough. So.
Have guys been passing around that website where you can plot everything?
What,
Have you-
is there a website?
There's a website where you
to
can
plot the possibilities of the.
Yeah.
you can basically select, like, if you win out, if somebody wins out, if this team loses this game.
Oh, what is that?
Do you want the link? It's on Twitter.
I don't know. No, you know what? No, we're not gonna do that. No, I might do it by myself. I don't want that floating around there. I'll do it by myself and maybe put some rumors out there. I don't know.
I think McCade Mattower probably said it best. Don't deal with it. Just win your next 2 games, and then you kind of see where everything lays at the end of Thanksgiving weekend next Saturday.
By the way, that link that was referenced there is the same one that I was talking about earlier in the show. It no longer works.
Oh.
So conspiracy grows.
The conspiracy does grow. Why is Brett Yormark and the Big 12 out to get Oklahoma and possibly Texas? If you're Oklahoma and Texas, you gotta go into this weekend just knowing that you're gonna probably, and it would be like really funny to me. I'm a sick person if both teams had like 20 penalties on Saturday.
I will say the 2 losses that Oklahoma had this year, Brett Yormark was in attendance for both of them. So where's Brett Yormark going to be this weekend? We'll find out.
Interesting. Very interesting. There he is. Brett Yormark, a.k.a. Connor Stallions, right there, right in the flesh. It is disgusting, and I think it is a conspiracy, and I think that we will march upon Arlington and go visit our good friend Brett Yormark possibly in the near future.
Why not? What the hell?
No, it's a wild day. It's a wild kind of development, and I think especially just this late in the season, it only adds to the fervor for the Oklahoma fan base. But for George Stoia, I'm Eddie Radosevich from the Soonerscoop.com studios. We'll be right back here on the Soonerscoop.com YouTube channel for a Tuesday practice report. We just wanted to hit on all of the news that is coming out from the Big 12 Conference. This godforsaken place, they got to get out of here. We'll see you next time.